Hi, my name is Karina Akidal. I'm the managing editor of Canadian Auto Dealer, and I'm here with Michelle Denogean of CMO of Roadster. Now, Michelle, I understand that you completed your survey, your report with NADA, your dealer impact study. And so I'm curious to know if you can share with us now, finally, some insights, some statistics, what the hot topics were of this report.
Sure. And thank you again, Karina, for having me on. So it's been really interesting to continue to track, what's been happening. As we had talked about previously, we had started tracking this back in May when showrooms were closed or only open by appointment. And so we started to see this trend around efficiency. And for the first time in like 35 years, NADA, who we partnered with for this study, also started to see that the units per salesperson was growing. So over the last 35 years, it stayed pretty static between, 9 or 10 units per. And all of a sudden, we started to see this elevate. So in our first wave, we saw that it was 13 units per person. And now we just completed our second wave in September, where we were looking at this saying, well, showrooms are back opened. Processes could have, gone back to a little bit of where they were before. What does it look like now? And so we were really, really excited when we came back and saw that the efficiencies not only held, but they increased even more. So now we're seeing that the dealerships in our sample in this second survey increased their units per salesperson on average to 16 from 13 back in May. So that's probably the biggest thing, because I think, so much we've been talking for so long about how digital retailing as a category is really helping dealerships modernize the customer experience. But really, if we can't figure out how to become more efficient in selling to our customers, then we can't really modernize it. Meaning, we all know that the number one, thing that consumers have complained about for years is the time it takes to purchase. So if we can get faster at it, and we can give them and empower them themselves to have a faster transaction, then it's a win-win. And I think that's really what's coming out, is that this idea of remote selling is really taking off, both on the consumer side and also on the dealership side.
So that's it. That's consumers are wanting to do more of the process online, and you're seeing that dealers that are moving to online are actually seeing more success, or are seeing success with this shift amid COVID-19. Now, that would suggest that they may not need as many employees if they're doing more of this online, or maybe they need just as many to manage the online aspect. What are your thoughts on this, or what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because during the throes of everything, unfortunately, we all had to look at our staff and make sure that we were right sized for the demand that we had, right? So lots of furloughs and layoffs. People are starting to recover from that. So most of the dealerships that we surveyed were either back 100% fully staffed, or about 3/4 of the way or so there. And I think really, when I look at the units per, it's not to say that you necessarily need less people. When we look at, things like our current close rates, and, we're not closing 100% of the deals in front of us, right? What it's saying, though, is that our expectations can be elevated, that we've always planned for 10 units per. And that's just sort of like, okay, well, if I can sell 10 units per salesperson and I have, 10 people, then that's going to net me 100 sales for the month. And I think what this is really telling us is elevate your expectation of your people, and you might be surprised at what they can actually accomplish when you give them the tools to guide people through some of this process online or digitally anyways. It could also be in the showroom, just digitally, right? Just makes it faster before they, finalize everything with paperwork. And so that's probably the biggest thing that we saw, right? Because it takes both sides, right? It's about the dealership getting more efficient. It's about the consumer getting more efficient. And what we were seeing is overall, regardless, because we also did a consumer side of the study. So not only did we survey 320 dealerships, and that was really what NADA helped us in that distribution to their members, but we also interviewed 1,000 consumers. And so part of that survey result really was seeing that regardless of whether that dealership was fully open, closed at the time that they bought in the last 5 months or by appointment, it didn't matter. About 44% of the consumers that we surveyed said that they did some portion of the transaction, not just the shopping, but the transaction online. And that's a huge jump from where we were last year, according to some of the Cox studies that are out there, where it was more like 10%. So we're seeing huge jumps in people saying that they're doing more of the price negotiation, more of their F&I selection, more just really of like coming to the deal terms that they need for themselves. So the more we can actually put the customer to work to do some of that remotely, the less time it's going to take us, right, in the dealership. So that's really the crux of the findings, is that that's what's driving the increase in units per salesperson.
In this case, so for Canada in particular, we're entering a second wave, and even in some provinces such as Quebec, there's already a lockdown period where they consider us already in the second wave. What advice would you offer to dealers on the digital retailing front, considering what they're going to be going through again?
Yeah, so I live in the state of California, which is probably pretty close to what you guys are experiencing, so I get it. I think it's such an odd time right now, and there's so much uncertainty, right? So as we go back into that type of lockdown, we really have to think about, what did we learn the first time to keep some kind of business continuity? And I do think that this strategy of really honing in on that remote selling skill is going to help all of the dealerships as we go through the second wave. Because when it first hit, we all scrambled. We're like, oh, how do we do this? People that maybe had digital retailing, and I know in talking to some of our customers in Canada, they were very grateful that they had it for months in advance, because it takes months to sort of really work out the kinks. But now, when you had people having to scramble and onboard, a few months ago, as we go forward, hopefully we've learned the skills that we need using the technology in order to just hit the ground running, if we really do get into a situation where showrooms are closed again, and having to sell completely remotely like that. So the biggest advice I have is just to really hone those remote selling skills, and think about, when you think about your people, think about the type of skill set that's really important for that remote selling opportunity. I think that's equally as important. And it's smart. I was just talking to a dealer this morning who was saying, we don't know, to your point, what the rest of this year is going to look like. So I think a lot of the dealerships that we surveyed that weren't back to 100% staffed were, in a lot of cases, doing that because they just weren't sure what the future held. So, when I was talking to this dealership this morning, he was saying on the variable ops side, he's sure glad that he has the technology, because he feels like he can do that with less people while he's trying to sort through what's actually happening in the world.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for taking the time to do this interview. And as always, I wish you and your family a good health and safety during this difficult time. And I certainly hope the situation in California and the rest of the US also improves.
Thanks, Karina. You too.